Rohit and Ananya's love story was supposed to be a fairy tale, but behind closed doors, it hid betrayal, deception, and a deadly secret that would shatter everything they knew. Ananya's past was a puzzle that even Rohit had never fully tried to solve. She often spoke vaguely about her childhood, moving from one town to another, with little mention of her parents or family. Friends who had known her before the marriage noticed gaps in her story, fragments of information that never quite added up. There were whispers of her changing names, attending different schools under varying identities, and leaving towns without explanation. It was as if she carried her life in pieces, each carefully hidden from prying eyes. Rohit, captivated by her charm and beauty, brushed aside any questions. To him, her mysterious past only added to her allure. But those who observed more closely began to feel unease. A distant relative mentioned a series of anonymous threats she had received years before, incidents that seemed to vanish without any resolution. Some spoke of a hidden drawer in her home that she refused to open, claiming it contained only personal papers. The secrecy fascinated Rohit, but it also planted tiny seeds of doubt in his mind. Occasionally, he would notice her slipping into moments of silence, staring at her phone with worry that she quickly disguised with a smile. Her friends laughed it off, attributing it to stress or mood swings. Yet the inconsistencies piled up, phone numbers that changed overnight, brief conversations cut short, and documents that appeared mysteriously altered. The more Rohit tried to ignore these signs, the more he sensed that Ananya's past was not just obscure but deliberately concealed, a shadow looming quietly over their seemingly perfect life. Ananya's past was shrouded in mystery, a labyrinth of secrets that even Rohit had never tried to fully uncover. She spoke rarely about her childhood, offering only fragments of her life. Brief mentions of small towns she had lived in, schools she had attended, and relatives she never seemed to know well. Friends who had known her before the marriage began to notice inconsistencies in her stories. Some remembered her changing names at different points, attending unfamiliar schools, and leaving towns without explanation. It was as if she had been living multiple lives, each carefully hidden from those around her. Rohit, enamored by her charm and grace, initially dismissed these oddities, seeing them as quirks that made her even more intriguing. Yet subtle warning signs began to surface. Distant acquaintances whispered about unexplained threats she had received in the past, incidents that had been quietly swept under the rug. Inside her home, a locked drawer in her bedroom remained strictly off-limits, which she insisted contained nothing but personal papers, though her behavior suggested otherwise. Occasionally, Rohit noticed her staring at her phone with a tense, almost fearful expression, quickly masking it with a smile when he entered the room. Small inconsistencies began to accumulate, phone numbers that changed overnight, appointments she claimed to have forgotten, and documents that seemed altered or missing. While friends laughed it off as minor eccentricities, a quiet unease settled over Rohit. It became increasingly clear that Ananya's past was not merely obscure but intentionally concealed, a hidden shadow that loomed over the couple's seemingly perfect life, threatening to disrupt the fragile world they had built together. One afternoon, while Rohit was cleaning the study, he noticed a small, nondescript drawer tucked beneath Ananya's desk. It had always been locked, and Ananya had insisted it contained nothing more than personal papers. Curiosity gnawed at him, and after some hesitation, he found a spare key hidden in a book on the shelf. What he discovered inside shook him to his core. A worn, leather-bound journal filled with Ananya's handwriting. As he flipped through the pages, the polished image of the woman he thought he knew began to unravel. The journal detailed secret relationships, hidden financial dealings, and encounters with people whose names Rohit had never heard. Some entries suggested involvement in incidents that bordered on criminal, shadowed by threats, lies, and manipulation. Each page revealed a side of Ananya that was completely at odds with the charming, devoted woman he had married. The entries were meticulous, almost clinical, showing a careful accounting of actions and their consequences. Rohit's mind raced as he realized the extent of her deception. She had carefully concealed, entire chapters of her life, crafting an image of innocence while living a web of lies. The journal hinted at unresolved crimes, unsolved disputes, and people who might still be searching for her. Shock turned into fear as Rohit understood the danger not just to his marriage, but potentially to his life as well. The woman he had trusted implicitly had secrets that could destroy him and everyone around her. In that moment, the perfect life he had cherished began to crumble, replaced by a gnawing dread that everything he believed in had been a carefully constructed illusion. Rohit could no longer ignore the growing unease that had settled over him. The journal had revealed a version of Ananya that was entirely foreign to him, and the weight of that knowledge pressed heavily on his mind. He decided he had to confront her, to demand answers and understand the truth behind the web of deception. When he brought up the journal, Ananya reacted with calm, measured denial, insisting that the entries were exaggerated or misunderstood. Yet her eyes betrayed a flicker of fear, a momentary lapse that confirmed the suspicions Rohit had been trying to dismiss. The tension between them became palpable, a heavy silence filling the corners of their once vibrant home. Soon, mysterious phone calls began arriving at all hours, each message more cryptic than the last. Someone seemed to know too much, hinting at knowledge only Ananya could possess. Friends and acquaintances noticed changes in their behavior, Rohit's restless anxiety, Ananya's evasiveness, and the quiet fear that had begun to creep into their interactions. Social events, once a source of joy, became exercises in tension management, with both pretending normalcy while shadows of doubt and danger loomed overhead. Even in private moments, Rohit felt watched, as if invisible eyes were tracking their every move. The life he had believed was perfect was now unraveling, replaced by a gnawing sense of dread. Every gesture, every whispered conversation, and every small secret seemed to carry hidden meaning. It became clear that Ananya's past was not merely a collection of old memories. It was a living, breathing force capable of disrupting the life they had built, and Rohit was powerless to stop it. The storm that night seemed almost symbolic, a dark omen for what was about to unfold. Rohit returned home to find the house unusually quiet, the kind of silence that immediately set his instincts on edge. Ananya was nowhere to be found, and signs of a struggle were evident. A chair overturned, a broken vase on the floor, and traces of mud leading toward the back exit. His heart pounded as he searched every room calling her name, but there was no response. On the kitchen counter lay a series of cryptic notes, each more alarming than the last, hinting at betrayal, manipulation, and danger that Rohit could barely comprehend. It became terrifyingly clear that Ananya's past was no longer confined to whispers or hidden journals. It had come alive in the form of a deadly reality. As the police arrived and began their investigation, Rohit learned that Ananya had been living a life far more complex and dangerous than he could have imagined. She had hidden her connections with people involved in criminal activities, individuals who might have held grudges and sought revenge. The discovery of her body days later in a remote warehouse outside the city confirmed Rohit's worst fears. The woman he had loved, trusted, and built a life with was gone, and the circumstances of her death were as twisted as the secrets she had carried. What began as a night of anxiety and uncertainty transformed into a nightmare of grief and horror. Rohit realized that he had been unknowingly entangled in a web far darker than anything he could have imagined, where love, deceit, and danger collided in the most devastating way possible. The investigation into Ananya's death revealed a labyrinth of secrets more complex than anyone had anticipated. Police discovered that her disappearance had been meticulously planned, almost as if she had anticipated danger and sought to manipulate events to her advantage. Evidence suggested that she had been involved with dangerous individuals, people from her past who had been tracking her movements for years, and who now appeared to have acted with deadly precision. Rohit was forced to confront the horrifying reality that the woman he had loved had lived a double life, interacting with criminals, falsifying documents, and hiding entire identities. The more investigators dug, the more layers of deception emerged. revealing that some of Ananya's acquaintances may have been complicit in her schemes, unknowingly or otherwise. Each revelation added a new layer of heartbreak for Rohit, who struggled to reconcile the charming woman he had married with the cunning and manipulative person revealed through the investigation. As evidence piled up, it became clear that her death was not simply the result of random violence, but the consequence of the tangled web she had woven around herself. Friends and colleagues who had once been trusted allies were now scrutinized, as police sought to understand who might have known more than they admitted. Rohit was left to navigate a world where every relationship, every smile, and every act of kindness seemed potentially tainted by deception. The life he had built, once filled with security and love, now felt fragile and uncertain, shattered by the realization that the danger had always been closer than he had ever imagined, lurking quietly behind the mask of a woman he thought he knew completely. As the investigation deepened, the circle of suspicion widened and the shocking extent of betrayal among friends and associates began to surface. People Rohit had trusted implicitly were no longer above scrutiny. One of his closest friends, someone he had considered a brother, emerged as a person of interest, secretly involved in covering Ananya's tracks and facilitating her hidden dealings. Every interaction, every shared confidence now seemed tainted by deceit. It became clear that the murder was not an isolated act of violence, but the culmination of years of manipulation, lies, and concealed motives. Friends and acquaintances who had once appeared loyal were implicated in providing information, resources, or support that enabled Ananya's secret life to flourish. The realization that betrayal had been so close to home added a profound layer of heartbreak to Rohit's grief. The man who had stood beside him through countless personal and professional challenges had, in subtle ways, contributed to the unraveling of his life. Even those who were not directly involved were forced to confront the uncomfortable truth. They had been blind to deception, manipulated by a woman whose charm and intelligence had masked a far more dangerous reality. Each new revelation brought not relief but a deeper sense of despair. Rohit's world, once secure and predictable, had been infiltrated by deceit in every direction. The murder was more than a crime. It was the devastating result of a complex web of human frailty, ambition, and greed. In the end, the heartbreak was magnified not only by the loss of Ananya, but by the revelation that trust, once freely given, could be weaponized with devastating consequences. Months after Ananya's death, the courtroom became the stage where the full extent of her life, and the forces that led to her demise, was revealed. Prosecutors presented evidence of her secret dealings, the criminal contacts she had maintained, and the carefully orchestrated deceptions that had ensnared not only Rohit but everyone around her. Some individuals were convicted for their direct involvement in her murder, while others faced charges for aiding her hidden schemes, knowingly or unknowingly. Rohit sat through the proceedings, each revelation twisting the knife of betrayal deeper into his heart. The woman he had loved, married, and built a life with had been living a life he could never have imagined, and the people he had trusted had been caught in the same web. The media coverage was relentless, exposing the shocking truths to a stunned nation. Friends and family struggled to reconcile the public image of Ananya with the dangerous, secretive person unveiled in court. For Rohit, the aftermath was suffocating. The house that had once been filled with laughter and love now felt empty, haunted by memories of a life that had been nothing more than an illusion. Grief was compounded by betrayal, leaving him isolated in a world that seemed to have turned against him. Yet, amid the heartbreak, there was a quiet clarity, an understanding that appearances can be deceiving and that trust, once broken, leaves scars that never fully heal. Rohit's journey through loss, deception, and revelation served as a chilling reminder of how fragile life and love can be, and how one person's secrets can destroy the world of everyone around them.